I want to start today by playing a little game. It's a hypothetical scenario, a classic game of Would You Rather. But I need to warn you right up front, the stakes on this one are actually uncomfortably high. So I want you to genuinely sit with this choice. Really visualize your daily life and decide what you would do.
Okay, I'm game. I usually lose these because I tend to overthink the logistics, but lay it on me. What exactly are we betting here?
We are betting your quality of life for the next 12 months,
Yeah.
one full calendar year. You have to give up one thing, just one, but it is a massive one.
All right, let's hear it.
Option A is that you give up your smartphone entirely. That means no scrolling, no apps, no Google Maps, no instant notifications, no Spotify in the car. You are back to landlines, paper maps, and, an MP3 player if you're lucky. You are completely disconnected from the digital hive mind.
Ooh, okay, that is visceral. I mean, I'm already sweating a little just thinking about trying to navigate a brand new city without GPS. But okay, I can picture it. It's inconvenient. It's definitely isolating, but it's survivable. What's option B?
Option B is you give up sex. No intimacy. No physical connection of that kind for a full year. So which one goes?
See, if you asked me this 10 years ago, or, if you asked a room full of people in maybe 1990 or 2005, this would just be a joke. It wouldn't even be a real debate.
Right, because you just assume biology wins.
Exactly. You assume the fundamental human drive for connection, for release, for that biological imperative is gonna win every single time. I mean, I'd toss the phone right in the river.
You would assume so. I certainly did. I thought, well, the phone is a tool, a very useful tool, but sex is sex. It's a primary drive. But we have some fresh data that suggests our assumptions might actually be completely outdated. We're looking at a 2023 study out of Hungary that posed this exact ultimatum to a large group of adults. And the results, they aren't just surprising, they are frankly terrifying.
Please don't tell me it was a landslide for the phone.
It wasn't a landslide, but it wasn't a landslide for sex either. It was practically a coin toss. Specifically, 44.53% of participants said, take the sex, I'm keeping the phone.
44%. Nearly half the people asked would rather go celibate for a year than disconnect from the internet.
That's the reality. And 55.47% chose to keep the sex. It is razor thin. We are looking at a world where nearly half the population values their digital connection as much as, or even more than, their physical, intimate connection with another human being.
That really just stops you in your tracks. It forces you to ask what the phone is actually providing. If it's competing with one of our most primal urges, it can't just be about checking email or, looking at cat videos. It has to be fulfilling a need that is just as deep, or perhaps even deeper, than physical intimacy.
Exactly. And I know the listener's thinking right now because I thought the exact same thing. You're thinking, okay, well, they must have surveyed a bunch of college kids on TikTok. Or maybe teenagers who haven't really experienced serious adult relationships yet.
Right, the iPad baby generation. That's the easy dismissal. Oh, it's just those kids and their screens.
But you actually dug into the demographics on this study. Who were these people?
Yeah, and that's where the story gets darker and honestly much more relevant to us. The data specifically points away from the stereotypical obsessed teenager. The preference for the phone over intimacy was actually most prevalent among middle-aged, middle-class individuals living in large cities.
Wait, hold on. We're talking about established adults, people with careers and mortgages.
Exactly. People with real lives, people who are likely in long-term relationships or marriages. These are the exact people who, when push comes to shove, are choosing the screen over their partner.
That fundamentally changes how we have to look at this whole issue. We aren't talking about a phase. We aren't talking about bad manners or kids who just don't know any better. We are talking about a literal rewiring of the adult brain, a fundamental shift in how established human beings prioritize their needs. And that is exactly what we are unpacking in this deep dive today.
It's a massive topic. We aren't just talking about why you shouldn't check your texts at dinner. We're looking at a deep psychological issue that is actively reshaping how humans bond, how we have sex, and, believe it or not, whether we even reproduce as a species.
The stakes are incredibly high. We've got sources today ranging from psychological profiles out of the University of Southampton to biological data on hormones and some very stark warnings about fertility rates. But before we get into the why, the psychology of it all, we really need to get our vocabulary straight. There are two terms that come up in almost every single piece of research we read for this, and we need to define them clearly so we know what we're fighting.
Agreed. Precision really matters here. The first term is one you've probably heard, maybe even used jokingly: phubbing.
Phubbing. I have to say, I hate the word. It sounds so silly. It sounds like something a cartoon character would do, but the definition is anything but funny.
It is a bit of a silly word. It's a portmanteau of phone and snubbing, but the action it describes is actually quite aggressive. Phubbing is the specific act of ignoring the person you are physically present with in favor of your smartphone.
Give us a concrete example. Paint the picture for us.
Okay, picture this. You're at dinner with your partner, you both had a really long day. You start telling them about this weird interaction you had with your boss. You're getting into the story, you're looking for empathy or maybe a laugh, and you look up. And they aren't looking at you. Their eyes are down, their thumb is scrolling. Maybe they murmur a little, uh-huh, but they aren't there.
Ouch. Yeah, I felt that in my chest just hearing you describe it. It's that little drop in your stomach, that micro-rejection.
That is a phub. It's an active choice the other person made to prioritize the device over you in that specific moment. It sends a very clear signal. This screen is more interesting than you are right now.
Brutal. And there's a second term, one that came out of a study from Brigham Young University that I honestly hadn't heard before. Technoference.
Technoference. It sounds a bit like a sci-fi villain or, I don't know, a genre of electronic dance music.
Coming to the main stage, DJ Technoference.
Right, exactly. But in the literature, it's much more clinical and systemic. Technoference refers to the everyday intrusions or interruptions in couple interactions due to technology. It's broader than phubbing. Phubbing is an action. Technoference is an environment.
So what exactly falls under technoference?
Well, it includes the buzzing of the phone on the table, even if you don't pick it up. It's the smartwatch lighting up on your wrist during a really serious conversation. It's the screen flashing on the nightstand at 2 in the morning. It's the constant ambient intrusion of the digital world into the physical space of the relationship.
Okay, so phubbing is the behavior.
Ah,
I'm ignoring you. And technoference is the result. The tech is interfering with us.
precisely. Technoference is the noise. Phubbing is the signal. And our mission today is to look at these two things not as annoyances, not as pet peeves, but as what one report called an intimate interloper. We're going to see how these devices create invisible walls that affect everything from our attachment styles to our birth rates.
Let's dive right into the why. Because when I hear that 44% stat, the people choosing the phone over sex, my brain just screams addiction. It has to be, right? We're just dopamine junkies. We can't help ourselves. We're essentially rats pushing a lever for a pellet.
That's the easy answer. It's the comfortable answer because it completely absolves us of responsibility. Oh, my brain is just hijacked. And sure, dopamine plays a huge role, and we will definitely get to the neurochemistry later. But the research from the University of Southampton suggests it's not just about chemical addiction or boredom. It's driven by deep psychological needs, specifically something called attachment insecurity.
Attachment theory. That's usually reserved for therapy sessions about our parents, right? My mother didn't hold me enough, that sort of thing. How does that apply to checking Instagram?
Well, attachment theory is basically the blueprint for how we relate to others when we are stressed or need comfort. The researchers found that your attachment style is actually a huge predictor of whether or not you are a phubber. Let's look at attachment anxiety first.
Okay, remind us. Anxious attachment is the clingy one, the worrier.
To put it simply, yes, people with high attachment anxiety generally fear rejection. They fear abandonment. They need constant reassurance that they are loved, that they are safe, that the relationship is on really solid ground. They are hyper-vigilant for any signs that their partner is pulling away.
Okay, so follow my logic here. If I'm anxious about my relationship, if I'm terrified you're going to leave me, wouldn't I want to pay more attention to you? Wouldn't I be glued to your every word? Why would I ignore you for a screen?
That is the million-dollar question, and that is the paradox the study uncovered. You would think they would be hyper-attentive, but the study found that anxious individuals are actually more likely to phub
That seems entirely counterintuitive. Why?
because the phone acts as a safety blanket. Think about the dynamic. If you are sitting with your partner and they are being quiet or they seem a little distant or maybe you just feel insecure for no reason at all, the real world is scary. The partner is ambiguous. They might reject you. They might say something that confirms your worst fears.
So the real person represents a threat to your emotional stability.
Exactly. But the phone. You open the phone and you have texts. You have likes. You have a social media feed that is curated specifically to please you. You can message a friend who you know will reply instantly.
So the phone provides the validation that they are terrified they won't get from the partner sitting right in the room.
It's a reassurance machine. They retreat to the digital world because it feels safer and much more controllable than the messy ambiguity of the real world. They aren't ignoring the partner because they don't care. They are ignoring the partner because they are scared.
That is profoundly tragic. It's a coping mechanism, that actually destroys the thing they want most. I want to be close to you, but I'm scared you don't want to be close to me, so I'll look at my phone, which makes you feel ignored, so you pull away, which just makes me more scared.
It is a classic self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's heartbreaking because the phone offers this cheap substitute for the connection they actually crave.
What about the other side of the spectrum? The avoidance.
Well, for those with attachment avoidance, people who are uncomfortable with too much intimacy or vulnerability, the phone isn't a safety blanket in the same way, it's a shield.
A literal barrier. I'm busy, don't talk to me.
Yes, if I have my nose in my email or if I'm working on my phone, we don't have to have a deep conversation about our feelings. I'm busy. It's a socially acceptable way to put up a wall.
So it's a way to be physically present, but emotionally absent.
Exactly. It regulates the distance. I'm sitting next to you, so I'm a good partner, but I'm on my phone, so you can't actually touch me emotionally. So whether you are anxious or avoidant, the phone serves a psychological function that keeps the partner at arm's length.
It's fascinating that two opposite psychological profiles end up with the exact same destructive behavior.
Mm.
But the Southampton study found something else that I thought was pretty wild. They talked about a psychological bridge. Specifically, that materialism acts as a bridge to phubbing.
Yes. This is a weird connection at first glance, isn't it? When we say materialism, we usually think of people who want Ferraris and diamond watches. We think of greed.
Right, I like nice stuff. I'm a consumer.
But in a psychological context, materialism is about where you derive your value. Do you derive your value from internal things like your character, your relationships, your skills, or external things like status, possessions, appearance, public perception?
Okay, I see the distinction. So how does that bridge to the phone?
The study found that materialism acts as a psychological bridge to phone addiction because, for a materialistic person, the phone performs two specific functions. First, it is a status object in itself, having the newest iPhone, the best tech. But more importantly, it is the portal to their curated self.
Ah, the version of themselves that exists online, the avatar.
Exactly. If your self-worth is tied to external validation, the phone is where that validation lives. It's where people like your photos. It's where you count your followers. It's where you maintain the image of the perfect life.
I remember you used an analogy in our pre-show notes that really stuck with me. You called the phone a validation slot machine.
That's really what it is for a materialist. You sit there, you pull the lever by refreshing the feed, and you see if you won. Did I get a like? Did I get a comment? Did my status go up today?
And the person sitting next to you on the couch.
They're real.
The real flesh and blood partner.
The person next to you is real. They are messy. They might have had a really bad day. They might be grumpy. They might have morning breath. They require effort. They require listening. They require compromise.
The partner is a lot of work.
Exactly. The partner cannot compete with the slot machine. The slot machine is high reward, low effort. The partner is high effort, uncertain reward. For someone who values external status and quick validation, the choice is pretty obvious.
It's frightening when you frame it in terms of effort versus reward.
Yeah.
It makes that 44% statistic make a lot more sense. We are fundamentally lazy creatures, cognitively speaking.
Yeah.
We want the easy hit.
We do. And the phone is the easiest, most reliable hit in human history.
And we have to talk about narcissism. Because the Journal of Personality published a study regarding narcissism and phubbing that broke this down into subtypes. I honestly didn't know there were flavors of narcissism. I just thought a narcissist was a narcissist.
It's surprisingly nuanced. We usually just think narcissist equals jerk. But the study distinguishes between two main types, narcissistic rivalry and narcissistic admiration.
Okay, break those down for us. What is narcissistic rivalry?
Narcissistic rivalry is the darker, more defensive side. These are people who see social interaction as a competition. They are antagonistic, they are incredibly insecure deep down, but they mask it with aggression. They need to be above others to feel okay.
So how do they react to being phubbed?
Badly. Very badly. If you phub a rivalry narcissist, they take it as a personal insult. They see it as a power move. You are ignoring me. That means you think you are better than me.
How dare you look at that screen when you should be worshiping me?
Basically. And they will retaliate. They will get angry. They might sort of fight. They see the phone as a rival for your attention and they want to crush it.
And the other type, narcissistic admiration.
These are the charming narcissists,
Got
the
it.
ones who want to be the life of the party. They are driven by self-promotion and grandiosity. They are generally more satisfied in relationships, but only as long as the attention tap is flowing.
So they are happy as long as you're looking at them.
Correct. But the moment you phub them, the supply cuts off. They might not get aggressive like the rivalry type, but they will likely just disengage and find someone else who will look at them.
It seems like phubbing is basically kryptonite for any kind of narcissist.
It is. The key takeaway here is that phubbing triggers these deep-seated personality traits. It's not just rude, it's poking at people's insecurities, their egos, and their fears. It activates the worst parts of our personality.
Which brings us to the impact this has on the relationship itself. Because if I'm poking your insecurity and you're retreating behind a shield, we are entering a cycle, a really nasty cycle.
We are, and that cycle is often defined by what the BYU study called the perception of intrusion.
This is where we get into the numbers on how often this happens. The BYU study found that 70% of women perceive that computers, phones, or TVs interfered with their relationship interactions, sometimes or more often. 7 out of 10.
That is a massive majority. It means that for most couples, the third wheel is a constant presence. And when they drilled down into the specific scenarios, the numbers were even more revealing.
What were the most frequent crimes?
The most frequent one, happening daily for 62% of people, was a partner using a device during leisure time.
That's the classic Netflix and chill and scroll.
Right. You're physically together on a couch, maybe the TV's on, but you aren't together. You are in two completely different digital worlds. You are sitting 2 feet apart, but your minds are thousands of miles away.
It's being alone together.
Exactly. Other big intrusions were getting distracted by the TV during conversation, or, and this is the one that I think does the most damage, pulling out a phone during a meal.
The mealtime phub. That one kills me. You're chewing, there's a lull in the conversation, and out comes the device.
It sends such a clear message. I am bored by you. I need stimulation that you cannot provide.
That's how it feels. It feels like you aren't enough. And that feeling leads to what the Université de Montréal study identified, a feedback loop of jealousy and surveillance.
Yeah, that study really highlights how the digital space breeds paranoia.
This is the snooping part of the equation.
It's more subtle than just snooping through texts, though that definitely happens too. The study found that jealousy over a partner's online activity leads to electronic surveillance.
What does that actually look like in practice?
It looks like checking who liked their photo. It looks like seeing who they are newly following. It looks like checking their last seen status on WhatsApp. He said he was going to sleep, but he was online 5 minutes ago.
I think we've all been guilty of that at some point. It's just so easy to do.
It is. But here's the interesting finding. The surveillance itself doesn't necessarily kill satisfaction. It's the jealousy aroused by what is found, or often what is imagined, that corrodes the relationship.
It creates a mistrust filter.
Exactly. Once you're looking for evidence that your partner prefers the digital world, or someone in it, to you, you will find it. If they smile at their phone, you assume it's about someone else, not just a funny cat video. You interpret every ambiguous action as a betrayal.
And then, what do we do when we feel excluded or mistrustful? We don't say, hey, I'm feeling insecure. We don't say, I need a hug. No, we do what the independent report talked about. We retaliate.
The tit-for-tat game. This is fascinating and really tragic. The report detailed exactly how people react to being phubbed. They feel excluded and less important. But instead of confronting it, they pick up their own phone.
Oh, you're checking Instagram. Fine. Watch you check Twitter. See how you like it.
It's completely defensive. The report identified 3 motives for this retaliation. One is straightforward revenge. I'll teach them a lesson.
Which never works, by the way. They usually don't even notice.
True, they are too busy scrolling to notice your protest. The second motive is seeking support. My partner isn't available to me right now, so I'll text my friend or post on Facebook to get that connection.
That goes right back to the attachment anxiety. Seeking reassurance elsewhere because the primary source is dry.
And the third is seeking approval. Posting something just to get likes to feel validated because the person in the room isn't validating you.
It's a race to the bottom. Two people sitting on the same couch, scrolling through separate feeds, angry at each other, seeking love from strangers.
It's the cycle of disconnection.
No.
And it doesn't just stay on the couch, it moves directly into the bedroom. And this is where the biology really clashes with the technology. This is where we see why that 44% statistic happens.
This brings us to Section 3 of our deep dive, the bedroom battlefield. And we have a report titled The Intimate Interloper that breaks this down biologically. It talks about a massive clash between dopamine and oxytocin.
This is crucial to understand. If you take nothing else from this deep dive, understand this chemical mismatch. Smartphones are dopamine machines.
Okay, we hear dopamine thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
Dopamine hits, dopamine fasting. But what is it actually doing to the state of the brain in this context?
Dopamine is the molecule of more. It is about seeking, novelty, anxiety, and anticipation. It is the chemical of the hunt. When you are scrolling, your brain is in a hyper-aroused state. It is scanning for threats, for news, for rewards. It is a high-frequency vibration.
Okay. And intimacy.
Intimacy, deep connection, and sex require a completely different chemical profile. They rely heavily on oxytocin and endorphins. Those are the chemicals of bonding, relaxation, safety, and physical presence.
So they are polar opposites.
Neurologically, they're like being in two entirely different gears. You cannot be in a high dopamine, hyper-aroused, novelty-seeking, scrolling mode, and then instantly just snap your fingers, switch into a deep, present, oxytocin-rich, intimate mode. The brain just doesn't pivot that fast.
That explains so much. You know that feeling. You're scrolling in bed, you put the phone down, and you turn to your partner, and your brain is still buzzing. You aren't really there.
Exactly. You are physically present, but neurologically, you are still in the hunt. You are still vibrating from the Twitter fight you just read or the news headline you just saw. You aren't safe and relaxed. You are alert and agitated.
The source compares this to the 80s and 90s. We used to worry about TVs in the bedroom being linked to less sex.
Right. And the advice back then was always get the TV out of the bedroom. But think about a TV. It's passive. You watch it from across the room. It's often a shared experience. Now we have two TVs, our phones, and they are infinitely more immersive and personalized than a television ever was.
And we hold them 6 inches from our faces.
Exactly. The Intimate Interloper report also mentions do not disturb modes, but it describes the phone itself as an invisible wall.
Yes, I really wanted to touch on that. Because it's not just about the internal chemicals. It's about the external signals between partners.
Think about the nonverbal cues of desire. How does sex usually start in a long-term relationship? It's rarely a verbal announcement like, I would like to engage in intercourse now.
Right. A glance, a touch on the arm, a shift in body language, a certain type of silence in the room.
These are very subtle signals. They require attention to be received. If you are looking at a screen, you miss them completely. The initiation happens, the partner sends the signal, but the signal isn't received.
So the sender feels ignored, they feel phubbed.
They feel rejected, they stop trying. And the receiver, the one on the phone, is oblivious. They didn't reject the advance, they just didn't see it. But the outcome is exactly the same. No intimacy and a growing sense of distance.
And then there is the actual content we're consuming on those phones. We have to talk about the pornography paradox.
Unpack that for us.
Well, the report discusses how smartphones provide private, instant access to pornography. And it argues this creates a script for sex that can be incredibly damaging to real-world intimacy.
Yes. Pornography is often performance-focused, visual, and highly edited. Everyone looks perfect, the angles are perfect, the timing is compressed.
Real intimacy is not that.
Real intimacy is awkward. It involves communication. It involves vulnerability. It involves bodies that aren't airbrushed. It involves things going wrong and laughing about it.
Real sex is messy. Porn sex is scripted.
Right. And when you have constant access to the edited version, you fall into the comparison trap. You start comparing your partner's body or the excitement level of your relationship to a curated digital fantasy. It creates this baseline dissatisfaction with reality. You start wondering, why isn't my life like that?
But is there actual data to back this up? Does internet usage actually lower sexual satisfaction? Or is this just, moralizing?
There is hard data. A study from Tabriz, Iran, looked specifically at internet dependency and sexual satisfaction. They found a strong negative correlation. The number was negative 0.47.
For those of us who aren't statisticians, what does negative 0.47 actually mean?
In social science, that is a very significant number. A correlation of negative 1.0 would be a perfect opposite. So negative 0.47 is a strong link. It means as internet dependency goes up, sexual desire and satisfaction go down.
Did they account for other factors? Because maybe people who are stressed work more on their phones and are just too tired for sex.
They did. They adjusted for job stress. They adjusted for how long the couple had been married. They adjusted for age. The effect held true across the board. The more dependent you are on the phone, the less satisfied you are in bed.
So we have the psychological disconnect, the biological mismatch, and the hard data showing satisfaction is dropping. But there's one more level to this deep dive that frankly terrified me. It's not just about us. It's about the future of the human species.
Right. Section 4, the existential threat. We are talking about reproduction.
There was a source titled Phubbing and Human Reproduction. That sounds incredibly dramatic, almost like science fiction, but the findings were stark.
It is dramatic, but the correlation is absolutely there. Phubbing is strongly linked to reduced reproductive intent. The stat that jumped out at me was that participants reporting high partner phubbing were 3 times more likely to express disinterest in having children.
3 times more likely. That is a massive swing. Why?
It's
Is it
like
just because they aren't having as much sex?
That's a big part of it. It's what we call situational infertility.
Hmm.
If you are on your phones until you fall asleep, the opportunity for conception simply doesn't occur. You are literally scrolling yourself out of the gene pool.
But the source suggests it's psychological as well.
Yes, think about the invisible wall again. Emotional distance and relational fatigue. If you feel like you have to compete with a phone for your partner's attention, the idea of adding a child to that dynamic feels impossible.
Parenting is a team sport.
Exactly. It requires total synchronization. If your teammate is mentally checked out, you don't want to start that project. You look at them scrolling at the dinner table and think, I can't raise a baby with you. You aren't even here with me.
That is profound. We are scrolling ourselves out of existence. The relational fatigue makes the future seem unmanageable.
It's a very sobering thought.
Okay, we have painted a very bleak picture here. We are anxious, we are jealous, we are sexually unsatisfied, and we aren't having kids because we're too busy watching reels. Please tell me there are solutions in the source material. I don't want to leave our listeners in a pit of despair.
There are solutions. And this is really the most important part. We need to move to Section 5, reclaiming the relationship. And the first step, according to the experts, is moving beyond blame.
That's hard. It's so easy to just say, you're always on your phone, it's your fault.
It is, but remember the psychology we talked about. If your partner is phubbing, it's not necessarily because they don't love you, it's a dopamine trap, or maybe it's attachment anxiety. The expert advice is don't attack the character, attack the habit.
So lead with compassion first.
Yes. If it's driven by attachment anxiety, the solution isn't just yelling, put the phone away. It's saying, let's connect so you feel reassured. You have to address the root need.
Okay, compassion. But we need practical strategies too. Strategy 1 is the meta conversation.
This is discussing the phone's role in the relationship without actually fighting about it. You have to calmly acknowledge the third wheel.
How do you start that conversation without it sounding like an accusation?
You use I statements. You say, I feel lonely when you check email during dinner. You focus on your feeling, not their action. And you do it when the phones are already away, not in the heat of the moment when everyone's defensive.
You're setting boundaries together rather than policing each other.
Exactly. Can we agree that the dinner table is a no-fly zone? If you agree on the rules together, it's a partnership. If you impose rules, it's a parent-child dynamic, and that never ends well.
Strategy 2 is environmental engineering.
This is my absolute favorite because it requires zero willpower in the moment. You simply change the physical environment to make phubbing impossible.
Give us some examples of that.
Phone-free zones. Specifically, the bedroom and the dinner table. If the phone isn't in the room, you literally cannot phub.
The Intimate Interloper report suggested charging stations outside the bedroom door.
It's a game changer. Buy a cheap alarm clock. They cost $10. If you remove the temptation physically, you don't have to fight the urge when you're tired.
And using Do Not Disturb modes effectively.
Set it to kick in 20 minutes before you go to bed. Give your brain that necessary buffer to transition from dopamine to oxytocin.
Strategy 3 is single tasking.
Stop media multitasking. If you are watching a movie together, just watch the movie. If you are talking, just talk.
The concept of continuous partial attention must be actively fought.
Yes. Be fully where you are.
And finally, strategy 4, reclaiming boredom.
We need to allow a gap in stimulation. Intimacy and conversation often happen in the quiet, slightly awkward moments that we usually fill with scrolling.
The mention of phantom vibration syndrome from the Scrib essay really hit home for me.
That feeling the phone is buzzing in your pocket when it's not, that's literal withdrawal. We need to detox. We need to be comfortable with silence again.
So let's wrap this up. We moved from the shocking preference for phones over sex to the psychological roots, the biological clash, and the practical steps to fix it.
So what is simple? Smartphones aren't going away. The goal is conscious digital hygiene. When you put down the phone, you are literally picking up the relationship.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought derived from that sex or smartphone data. If 44% of people would trade intimacy for their device, you have to ask yourself, are we using these devices to connect with the world, or are we using them to hide from the vulnerability of being truly known by the person sitting right next to us?
That is the real question.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.